Thank you, everyone, for joining this conference call today, this audio update from the Pennsylvania Independent Automobile Dealers Association on this snowy Tuesday. This is our Pennsylvania Department of Banking Examinations guidance, 20 minutes by telephone. You will be receiving shortly, if you haven't already, an email that lists the guidance that I'm going to talk about today. I think we may be having an email glitch, but in any event, you should have that shortly. And I'm going to run through that list, provide you with comments, and if you have questions on items, please feel free to ask them. And I'm here with Eric Garcia, our Director of Operations from PIADA. We're doing this in English 8 o'clock and in Spanish at 8:30 to provide as much guidance and assistance and service to our members as possible. We've hired a lobbying firm for 2015, and they're beginning to work on a number of issues for us, such as dealer title fees and dealer lien fees, and keeping the safety recalls from becoming legislation, because there was a big push for it in the last legislature, and we staved that off. And there are other issues that we'll be watching out for and keeping you apprised of. So with that, let me commence. Regarding examination guidance, when the Department of Banking and Securities sends an examiner to your institution, typically they would make a telephone call in advance to let you know that they're coming in. They send an examiner in. The examiner asks for a number of deals to be ready for the examiner to be able to access as a sort of a test of your total number of deals, and they'll go through your deal jacket. But generally, apart from the deals, and we'll go through the deals as well, items they're looking for when they walk in the door: license posted in plain view. It's very important to have that because they want the consumers to see that. Your records, they want them stored through 2 years from final entry, and multiple location rules may apply. So if you keep all your records in one location or want to do that, you have to request that from the Department of Banking in writing, and then they have to give you written approval. They don't have to. Then they may give you written approval, and if they do, then you keep all your records in one location. Installment sale contracts. These have been revised substantially recently, as you know, because of the Pennsylvania Consumer Credit Code. That took about 6 years to pass. PIADA was involved in keeping the interest rates where they are and making sure that there would not be any loss of default fees and that sort of thing. There were some additional consumer protections that were put on there from the perspective of the legislature, and all the trade associations had some input in that because there was a joint report prepared. They worked with the Joint State Government Commission, and that got resolved. In any event, the new installment sale contracts are required now. They've been in place for a couple of weeks at this point, and so make sure that you have an updated installment sale contract, because that's one of the first things they're going to look at now that you start using those new contracts. You don't have to backdate or go back with your new contract on deals that were already done prior to the Pennsylvania Consumer Credit Code coming into effect, but going forward, they are required. Consumer complaints. This is very important. When you have a consumer complaint and the Department of Banking calls you on that, which would be pretty rare, but it may happen, or the Attorney General's office calls, you're not automatically convicted just by virtue of them calling you. They know that there are two sides to every story, that there are consumers who are difficult, unreasonable, trying to get something free for what they've done, that type of thing, willing to listen. And the thing they want, basically, if you have a consumer complaint, is for you to do your best to resolve it. That doesn't mean you have to cave in, but they do want to know that there is some type of resolution, or at least an attempt at a resolution. Keep your document, so that when you resolve a consumer complaint, if it comes back later in some different format, you will have records to show that you promptly attempted to handle the particular matter. That's very important to them. Enforcement matters. If there are any enforcement matters that are existing, such as if there's an enforcement order against your business, they'll want to check to see that there's compliance. There will be reporting involved in that. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes. They'll look at 30 deals at least, generally, and they're looking for various things, such as gaps or guaranteed automobile protection coverage. They'll look for debt cancellation agreements, debt suspension agreements with installment sale contracts, and they'll want to see that these were voluntarily entered into, if they were entered into at all. They'll look for a bill of sale, make sure it's properly filled out. So also on the installment sale contract, they want to know that the consumer got a copy. So your installment sale contracts have multiple pieces to them if you are utilizing the written form contract, and so PIADA has those, for example. And just make sure when you deal with a consumer that you give them a copy of that at the end of the deal, and that everything is already recorded on that installment sale contract. So, bills of sale, list of incidental products and services within the last 3 months. So that's kind of that voluntary list that I just went through, agreements, debt suspension agreements. Incidental project disclosure forms. So warranty, service contracts, debt cancellation agreements, debt suspension agreements, GAP, credit insurance, they're non-required insurance products. So in your forms, there's reference that they're completely voluntary and separate signature lines on the PIADA forms for that. Buy here, pay here contract and history in the last 6 months. And buy here, pay here documents in the last 10 sets. So with buy here, pay here, that's where you have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau potentially involved. Otherwise, it's FTC at the federal level. And they are typically looking at deals involving very large entities because they want to send a message nationally when they do enforcements because they have limited staff in comparison to the large number of dealers around the country. So in any event, buy here, pay here is very important to them because they view those customers as the most susceptible to negative activity from a business because they're viewed as had the lowest economics or the least amount of income. They're the most vulnerable in the view of the regulators. So they're very, very keyed in on making sure that buy here, pay here is done right, that the contracts are correctly done. They want to see copies of all advertisements. So that's going to be if you do anything on the radio or television or internet ads, they want to see the written copies or the script that was utilized for radio within the past calendar year. And you have advertisement requirements at the state level with the Attorney General's office and the used car practices rules, and at the federal level, particularly with the FTC. Basically, and that's generally it's to prohibit the unfair trade practice of deceptive advertising. So our dealers, of course, are trying to be as honest as possible in the advertisements, but at the same time, they want to make sure of that. FTC just did a big sting operation on advertising last year, and we sent out an email blast about that to our dealers, and then after that, with less detail, we provided in our magazine information regarding the FTC sting. It was a multi-state sting. Pardon me. They basically showed egregious advertising dishonesty or failure to properly disclose items. And items that were offered and then were not available, that type of thing. So, there's always a small number of folks in any industry who engage in that type of activity, and they're doing everything they can to discourage that. Repossessions within the past year, and I want to look at, if you have 30, I want to look at 30, and complete related files with payment history, receipts, notice of repossession. So the repossession notices, there's been some addition of language in the Consumer Credit Code that was just passed. Generally, the main item that was added is you have to list a contact person when you send out a notice of repossession, a contact person that the customer can contact at your dealership or whoever's holding the paper to be able to contact them and try to work through the repossession, try to get their car back, which involves them basically finding another loan or paying up on their loan and paying any late charges and continuing on from there. Business cards, you want to see your business cards, an affidavit, letter of authenticity signed by the corporate officer owner regarding the record. So they'll present you with an affidavit basically that says, you dealer hereby do swear to authorities, to state government authorities, that what you provided to their examiner is correct. So that's the examination general information that started with the license posted in plain view for all of your records for the Department of Banking to be able to review a segment of your records as a sample. Next major item is the Department of Banking also provides a questionnaire, and the examiner will ask that the licensee fill out this questionnaire. So let's just go back basically to licensee. You've got the Pennsylvania Department of Banking as your regulator. It used to be the Motor Vehicle Sales Finance Act for 50 years. Now it's the Consumer Credit Code, which is a recodification of it. And this questionnaire is applicable to licensees. So if you're a dealer, you have an installment sales contract license. You may also have, in a separate corporation, a sales finance company license. Only a sales finance company is allowed to buy your installment sale contract paper. That includes banks. They have to be licensed as sales finance companies in order to purchase your installment sale contract. So another thing you want to do to protect yourself is make sure that the entity you're dealing with does have their updated and presently applicable sales finance company license. You have to get them every year, as do the installment sale sellers or dealers from the Department of Banking. Apply by September 1 or so to get your license renewed for October 1. Sometimes we've seen sales finance companies forget to renew, and so that's very negative for them, and it's negative for dealers, because if a dealer sells a contract to an unlicensed entity, it's a violation, and there can be fines assessed. And the validity of the contract in terms of being able to collect interest comes into question. Sell only to licensed sales finance companies. Buy here, pay here dealers. I want to know the number of deals in the last year. The document preparation fee, that's about to change again. It changes every year. We're waiting for the Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Labor, to provide their December 2014 inflation statistics so that we can calculate the change in the document preparation fee. This is something that PIADA basically is the entity that got this done a few years ago. These used to be $45, $50. They weren't anywhere in the law, and now there's an inflation adjustment every year. Unfortunately, PennDOT's caught on to that with their dealer title fees and dealer lien fees, which will keep going up every year starting in a year or two. So, but in any event, you're at $112 paper transaction if you're not using a CDR, for example, or $133 electronic in 2014. So mid-January or so, we'll get the announcement from U.S. Department of Labor. We'll send an email blast out to our members to let everybody know immediately of the anticipated change in these fees. These must be separately itemized on installment sale contracts, and that's listed in the contract forms. Records must be stored at the license location. All right, so it's that's important to remember, because if, for example, the Department of Banking didn't announce and they just decided to walk in during your business hours and they wanted to see your forms based on some complaint that they got, for example, you'd want to have your records there and not elsewhere, so they need to be stored safely. And they're not out on a counter where anybody who walks in can just grab them and obtain basically personal customer financial private information, such as Social Security numbers and all that type of thing. They'll write you up for that also, and I'll get into that a little bit more within the next 6 minutes. Names of assignees of installment sale contracts. They want to know which sales finance companies or which banks or which non-depository entities you're selling your installment sale contracts to, so that they can check and make sure that they're licensed, that you're in compliance, and that the entities that are buying your contracts are in compliance. Volume of business in the past 3 years. This will also be on this questionnaire, and we're still in the questionnaire. Number of loans, dollar volume, principal amounts originated. So they'll ask you to calculate all of that. Whether there's been any guilty plea or your dealership or anyone in your dealership has been charged with crimes in the last 5 years, and they'll ask you to sign the questionnaire verifying that it's accurate. Moving on to buy here, pay here. Additional questions may include buy here, pay here contracts, which I mentioned, payment history in the last 6 months, 10 sets of buy here, pay here contracts, and contents of contracts will be reviewed. There's no difference between an installment sale contract for buy here, pay here versus for a non-buy here, pay here, or there doesn't need to be a difference. The main item is whether the contract is signed or not over to somebody else. Buy here, pay here, of course, it's not assigned, and the dealer keeps it. Although the dealer may have a structure, and you keep this in mind for those of you who are just starting out buy here, pay here, a lot of dealers that are dealing with buy here, pay here set up their own sales finance company as an RFC, a related finance company, and then they sell their installment contracts basically over to their related sales finance company that has a sales finance company license. There are tax benefits related to that, and we have vendors who can help you with that. So keep that in mind. You can make more money if you're not making the money you want to make in buy here, pay here by structuring yourself the right way. And we have several folks on our board who will tell you who the best people are. It's not just your executive director saying this. We can get you just folks on our terrific board of directors who can help you with this. Other documents examiners may want to see: your red flag rules policy. Don't panic if you have an haven't heard of any of this, email me or email Ari or email Shannon after this call and let us know, and we can help you with these forms. Not legal advice. None of this is legal advice. This seminar is not legal advice, but just so you know. Red flag rules policy is basically to detect and deter, prevent, report identity theft. It's all about preventing fraud and identity theft of customer information. Privacy policy, if you're engaging in financing, the privacy policy has to be provided to the dealer, to the customer, letting them know what you're going to do with their personal financial information, whether you utilize it with affiliates, whether you sell it to banks, that type of thing, and then they can basically prohibit it going beyond affiliates that you need to process for it or any process your payment. Notice of repossession. They want to see that contact person at the licensee listed on your notice of repossession. Make sure that's in your notice of repossession. Efficiency notices, I want to take a look at those, make sure that they're adequate. I'm going to add one here that I don't think is in your mail, but notice the cosigner. That's basically if you have cosigners on deals, there's an FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, requires that there be a separate notice provided to the cosigner that says, "Dear cosigner, you're as responsible for this debt as anybody else as the actual signer for the installment sale contract." And we don't have to go after the installment sale contract signer first. We can go after you first for the money to pay off this loan, so be sure of that. The cost of an exam per day is $508, including all examiner travel-related costs. We get complaints about that sometimes. When we get those complaints, you want to be sure. Feel free to contact PIADA because we have contacted the Department of Banking on behalf of dealers who said, "Hey, this examiner came in and chewed gum for half a day and then charged me $1,500. What's going on here?" So the Department of Banking is willing to listen to those, and every once in a while we actually win one. So keep that in mind. Penalties, Consumer Credit Code, $2,000 per violation, civil penalty. Per violation could be per contract. We don't typically see that because they're not looking to run people out of business unless they think that person is so egregiously bad. But they have pretty stiff penalties that are in that Consumer Credit Code. And the CFPB can impose a pretty large fine, a very large fine on a multi-state binder paid your dealership recently for improper documentation and loan files. And also, it was really, the focus was even more, I would say, on debt collection practices that they felt were improper by this particular dealership. They felt they were really strong-arming, calling outside of the hours, intimidating, etc., and they didn't like it. So that's our summary, and we have a minute left. If anybody has any questions, otherwise we'll let you get out there and sell cars. Any questions from anybody?
That FTC notice for co-buyer, where is this? That's still on the contract, or have you have to create something in like 12 point or 20 points?
It's in two places. It's in the PIADA installment sale contract we reference on there, the notice to co-signer as a separate document. PIADA does sell that document. So that there are three pieces. Basically, you can give one to the consumer, you can put one in your files, and you have a third copy that you can utilize. So we do have that, and we can provide that to you.
Brett?
Yes.
We were thinking about going from buy here, pay here to the lease to own. Is there someone at PIADA that would know more about that? I'm having a hard time finding like the rules and regulations that apply to leasing versus buy here, pay here.
Please tell, and I'd be happy to speak with you about that.
We have dealers that currently do that. We can try to connect these two together so that they can walk you through that process as well.
Right, and not somebody who's in your market area.
Right, they're completely separate, but it has been a hot topic lately.
Yeah, seems like a growth area, another place to make money.
Yeah, well maybe I'll if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That'd be fine. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate your support, and we hired a lobbying firm for 2015 and for years going forward. We're really excited to try to promote and protect you, and our board of directors is committed to it, as we are at the staff level, to continue to improve things. So have a great day. Sell well. Take care all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just that's it, Angela.